3 seconds isn't quite quick enough to set this up. Right, okay. Here I am. Sorry, delay again. Not dog sick this time, but internet issues. But there you go. That's the life of a internet personage. Right, okay. So let's talk about training license. Probably be quite a short one, just so I'd give you some ideas about it. Really, certainly lots of debate. I think one of the main issues is if you get a training license is to obviously practice, to use it to practice. That sounds a bit silly, doesn't it? But I certainly know a lot of people that get the training license end up getting in that treadmill of working, earning money, etc., and forget to use it for what it's for, which is the practice, and forget to practice by watching videos and buddies and all that type of thing. Because of course, teaching is what you're training to do, so practice at teaching is a good idea. The problem is learners don't stick to subject, they don't stick to phases, and you can certainly practice your full talk through your Q&A technique and all that sort of thing, but you can't practice it in the way you would with a trainer or even a buddy. So it certainly gets used to being in the car, which is a good thing. It gets used to what learners can do. It certainly can practice all the skills that we talked about in the last video, but it can be detrimental because it's not the same. So if you say to a pupil, keep your feet still, they might not, whereas the examiner would. If you say to a pupil, if you don't say to a pupil, keep your feet still, they might keep their feet still anyway and go nice and slow on the manoeuvre. But if you don't say that to an examiner, they won't go nice and slow. So you can see it's not necessarily realistic. So your output isn't the same as your input as it would be on a part 3. And then I can give you a full sense of security. So you could, for example, do moving away and stopping with the pupil, not say keep your feet still enough, but they'd still be okay. And you could do that 5, 6, 7, 10 pupils and you'd be absolutely fine. You think, oh, this is all right, I'm doing this all right, I'm doing it right because the pupils aren't stalling and blah, 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 blah. And then you go to an examiner, you don't say keep your feet still when you put the handbrake down, they shoot off up the road. So it's an awkward one. I think it can be useful, but use it for the right reasons. Use it for gaining experience, but be aware that experience isn't necessarily realistic to the experience required for the part 3. And don't fall into the trap of earning money on it and doing 20, 30, 40 hours a week, no time to watch videos, no time for training, no time for buddy practice, and so on. So it's a difficult one. I wouldn't like to say don't do it, I wouldn't like to say to do it. What I tend to do with my PDIs is we train for the 40 hours or thereabouts, see where they're at. If I feel they're good enough and they feel they're good enough to take the test, then we have a go at the test. And if the test doesn't work out, and luckily 95% of the time it doesn't work out, then we can look at the potential of taking real learners out to practice it. But I think it's important, well, you have to do 40 hours anyway, but it's important to do that proper training first and try to, as much as possible, keep to that when you're doing your learners. But unfortunately, it's not as easy as that because they won't stick to subjects. Say you can't just go off and do emerging, you have to do turning as well. You probably come across rock closets, you'll kind of clearly come across meeting situations at the same time, clearance, etc., etc., etc. And that makes it more difficult to understand how the test works. So it's to say it can be useful without repeating myself 17 times, which I have already. I'm still thinking in my head just to sort of give you some ideas. But you do have to bear in mind how the part 3 works. So what I would say on that is, I think it's pretty important if you take a training license to use it for the purposes I've said just now, but probably 3, 4, 5 days a week before the part 3, stop doing learners and have some training, have some buddying and get right back into what the part 3 is about. Use those skills that you've honed in on your with your training license and make sure that you then get back into where they need to be for the part 3, so you're not over instructing, etc. So take a break before your part 3, say 5 days a week, something like that, and get some additional training in there, whether it be buddying, whether it be with a trainer, just to get yourself back into the part 3 mode, because learners and part 3 aren't the same. When they change it, hopefully later this year, then it will be very more relevant, and I certainly would be recommending training license at that point, because you'll be taking a real learner and all that type of thing, and we'll talk about it later on. But it would be more relevant now. It can muddy the waters. It depends on what sort of person you are. If you think you can separate the two and you can use one as practice and then sort of a week before, so home back in on the part 3 and you know, watch videos and go out and practice and really go and use it, it can be a useful tool. But you may not need it. If you're ready, you're ready, and you can pass the test. But I'm not saying chuck away a test, but only, you know, take advice of your trainer that you're ready for the test and have a go, and then you can have a look at whether you should be doing a training license or not. So, you know, this is a short one this evening, so please ask any questions if you've got any on this. It's down to your personal circumstances as well. One thing I would certainly recommend is you don't give up a job to do a training license, because if you don't qualify within the 6 months, you're now not got an income, and it all gets very messy, and you're paying for a car and all that sort of stuff. So you have to look at your personal circumstances. Of course, you're an adult, it's up to you whether you do that or not, but be aware there's no guarantee you're going to qualify, and therefore you know, depending on what type of job you've got and whether you can get back into it quite easily and all that sort of thing. Doing it part-time is okay, but the problem with doing a full-time job and part-time instruction is where's your practice time, where's your studying time, where's that going to come from, where's your family time and all that sort of stuff. So bear all that in mind. The other option from a training license is to get a pupil. Get yourself a pupil. Quite easy nowadays with what I call bolt-on insurance. Apparently it's not called that, but that's what I call it. And basically, you may not have a car suitable. Your husband, wife, next door neighbour, person down the road, brother, sister might have a car available that you could then buy bolt-on insurance for a pupil. And it's about £80 a month, and then the pupil can learn to drive in that car. So you can find a pupil from one source, a car from another source, and yourself. I'd get the pupil to pay for the bolt-on insurance because you can't take any money, so you can't sort of liaise that. So they buy the bolt-on insurance. You then give the lessons, make sure that you're insured to drive the car if you have to drive it from A to B, etc. So if you have got a car suitable, it would be ideal. It doesn't need to be dual controlled, and go out with a real pupil, but do just 1 or 2 pupils. You don't have to worry about paying for a training license. You don't have to worry about paying for the additional 20 hours and all that type of thing. You can go out and actually practice with a pupil. That is a very useful tool. So think about taking a pupil or 2 out in their own car with their own insurance, or someone else's car and their insurance, and then you go out and practice, and that's a really useful thing to do. The other thing is buddying. I mentioned it a couple of times here, just in case you're not aware. If you go onto the site, drop down menu for PDI section, you'll see buddy map there. Click on there and you'll see people in your area, and they're people that are using the site as well. And to go out and practice with someone is really powerful, because it's a really good way of learning what you're doing is right or wrong and that type of thing. The most important part of buddying, I believe, is actually when you're in the driver's seat pretending to be the trainer, the examiner. The reason that's really important is because you'll think, well, they didn't say keep your feet still, I'm going to speed up. Or they didn't give me a because on that junction, so on the next one I'm going to ignore them. They didn't give me a because from my right shoulder, so I'm going to ignore them next time. They didn't tower check the right shoulder, so I'm not going to. They didn't say keep your feet still, so I'm not going to. I'm going to move my feet, etc., etc. And by doing that, what it does is when your bum's back in the other seat, it makes you very, very aware of what you should be saying, because you've seen it from the third party from the other side, if that makes sense. And I've found that people that do that, people that buddy more than train with me or more than do training license, much higher success rate, because they really help each other, do quite a lot of hours. And I've got 2 guys at the moment that are buddying together. They're doing about 10 or 15 hours a week. Just an hour here, 2 hours here, an afternoon here. And before you know it, you do lots of hours in, free, swap copies and stuff. Be careful of driving other people's cars, because that can be awkward. Third party, you might have third party insurance, but only third party, they've got a new Bentley, it might be awkward. So you might want to take both cars to a site, and you drive yours, and then when you want to swap, they drive theirs. You get the idea. But just be aware of that. But buddying is really powerful. It can be awkward to find a buddy, so if you go on the buddy map, there's no one in your area, look around. Some of them are willing to travel up to 50 miles. If you're willing to travel 20 miles, you could find someone 70 miles away, which is quite a long way in this country. And if there isn't anyone there, put yourself on there, because if you're not on there, it could be someone around the corner that's also not going on there, and you could easily meet up. So buddying, I think, is something I would try before I went down the training license route, because you can do it reasonably early on in training, particularly if you're both using the site, because most people would be on the buddy map, and you're both coming at it from the same way. So set a little task for each other. Right, we'll both look at moving away and stopping next week. We'll look at the demo videos and we'll look at the overview, and then we'll go and practice that. Then we'll go and look at this and da, 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 da. And one, it makes you study, because you've got someone to answer to when you turn up next week, and 2, you're both got the same information. So buddying is something I would consider before a training license, because training license is practice, so is buddying. Buddying can be more powerful because you get your bum in the other seat, and as I said before, it's a really powerful tool. It's worth a try. So if there's no one on there, put yourself on there. It's done manually. Try and do it once a day, but the printout list is done automatically, so you'll be on there straight away, but you won't be on the actual physical map straight away. But certainly I update it daily where possible. So don't panic if you're not on there. If it's a couple of days, kick me, send me an email or text, say, come on, Blaine, get me on that map, because do try and check it. Sometimes I forget, life gets in the way, etc. So don't be afraid to kick me. I'm here to be kicked. Not right now. Give me a chance, So So they're your options really. So main crux of this really is before you consider the full training license, like you look at your other options, buddying, maybe getting 1 or 2 pupils yourself, which you can't charge for, but you probably wouldn't use your car, and therefore you'll use their petrol and their insurance, and therefore all it's costing you is time. If you've got time to do training license, you've got time to go a couple of hours a week with a local person. If you think, oh, I can't think of anyone, I don't know anyone around me, I've recently moved here, got a suitable car, but where do I get a pupil from? Facebook. Go on Facebook. Train to be a driving instructor, looking for a learner that wants free lessons. Needs to, if they need to supply a car, needs to supply their own car and insurance, or needs to supply the insurance for my car, whichever way you're doing it. Then you'll find someone straight away, or just word of mouth, just next door neighbour, friend. Before you know it, someone's going to want lessons, because there's plenty of people out there wanting to learn to drive. I've been tagged in free Facebook posts today for people to learn to drive, and there's not instructors haven't got the availability, so it's not a bad thing. You don't do loads and loads because you'll just end up spending a fortune on petrol and stuff if it is, or you'll just be out all the time. But 1 or 2 is absolutely fine. So give that a thought anyway. Just look to see if there's any questions. I've missed some last time. No, okay. Well, thank you for listening, and the next one will be in a day or 2, but I'll post it on this page, so you'll be able to see what that is and what it's going to be about. But we're going to keep these going regularly every 2 or 3 days, just because they're going well. They're getting lots of views. People seem to be liking them, getting good feedback. So I'll keep doing these little things. Thank you. Bye bye.